Good morning and welcome to the Brattleboro Citizens Breakfast. I won't try to make a joke because I won't ask Moss, where are the cards? Where are the cards? Anyway, we're here this morning to talk about curbside composting, and probably if you're here you know about that, but you may be called upon to become an evangelist in your community about curbside composting. So if you don't know, listen attentively and you'll learn everything you need to know about curbside composting. Otherwise, you maybe get motivated to go out and tell your neighbors about it. Moss Kaler is here and knows everything about curbside composting, including where the carts are. So here you go.
Thanks, Bob. Hold your applause to the end. Some of you, as Bob said, might be very knowledgeable about the curbside compost program, and some of you might know very little. So I'll give a very brief history. The select board in Brattleboro has been wanting to save money, basically, for a number of years, and we can certainly all appreciate that. Scraps in organics, and we want to keep those items, food scraps and organics, out of the landfills because they take up space. And so the landfills will have a shorter life if they fill up with food scraps. And also, it produces a methane gas, which is a very bad greenhouse gas when food scraps and organics basically rot in the landfill. And the other thing is, food scraps are very heavy. They have a large water content. And when trash is taken to the landfill, the town is billed by weight, and they're billed $105 a ton for every ton that goes into the landfill. And so if we can divert some of that, we make a savings, and that's just what we're doing by asking Brattleboro citizens to separate food scraps and organics from their trash stream and put it at the curbside where it will be picked up weekly and taken, instead of 100 miles to the Moortown or Coventry landfill, it'll be taken just about 2 miles up to Old Ferry Road, where it will be mixed with leaves and other brown, brushy parts of compost that help the food scraps break down quickly, and then they will be turned and checked and monitored, and over a period of weeks and a few months will end up being very rich nutrient compost that people can purchase and put on their gardens or their lawns. If there's a large enough quantity, they might be used in highway projects for bank stabilization, or where they want to grow grass where the earth has been disturbed. It's one of life's cycles. It just happens in the forest. The leaves fall from the trees. They fall to the floor of the forest. Over a period of time, they break down through microbial activity and bacteria, and they become a part of the soil. And the same is happening with our food instead of being buried in a landfill. Last fall, we had a pilot project with 150 participants, and they were all given a variety of curbside containers and a variety of in-house kitchen containers. And that pilot was to find out if this would work town-wide. And the pilot was a great success. And as most of you know, we are now going to go town-wide. And we've been trying to get the word out, and you folks can all help with that, in letting people know that this program is available, and they can sign up. And I'll mention this a few times, where to sign up. It's go to the town website, which is www.brattleboro.org, and there on their homepage, on the right-hand side, under the heading News, is the link to curbside compost sign up. And you click that link, and you just fill in your name and address, phone number, and email address if you have one. We are going to be starting pretty soon. We've had some delays in getting the curbside carts. We initially said when we started this that we would start in early April. Now it looks like we'll be starting in early to mid-May. We do have, we're getting 2 different sizes of carts. This is it. They're all going to be labeled with this logo, which is a takeoff on the old town logo that had the skier on it, except we've modernized him. We made him into a modern ski jumper instead of the old logo, which had a guy look like he was busting through the moguls going down a double diamond trail on Mount Snow. He really wasn't, didn't look like a ski jumper. But this cart will handle families from 1 to 4 people, and it's a 13-gallon cart. We also ordered a 21-gallon cart, which will work for families with more members, up to, I'd say, 6 or 7 members, and there aren't many single-family households with more than 7 members, but if a very large family should sign up for the curbside compost, we would find an even larger cart for them, but we didn't order large numbers. A flyer. This has a lot of information in it. It's you can't answer every single question on one piece of paper, 2 sides, but this flyer comes awfully close to that. The biggest questions of all is, when are the carts going to be available? And they're going to be, all I can say is they're going to be available soon. I have we already have these carts. We're waiting for the larger carts, as I mentioned. I've gotten a tentative date that they're going to arrive in Brattleboro, and it's not in the too far distant future. But I don't want to give a date out just yet and find out if there's a delay, then we got to change the dates and we have people showing up. But the carts, I can tell you where it's going to happen, and the carts are going to be distributed from the Nelson E. Withington ice rink at Memorial Park, and we will do it on 2 consecutive Saturdays and the Wednesday evening in between. So there'll be 3 different distribution days, which I'm hoping works for most everybody. I'm sure there'll be a handful of people that can't make any of those 3 times, and we'll get a cart to those other people somehow, but we don't want to hand deliver scores of carts. One of the big questions is, why should I join curbside compost program? Because I already compost in my backyard. I'm already a composter, so you know, what would be the benefit either to me as a household, or what would be the benefit to the town or the environment? And there's a very simple answer to that, and it's not obvious, but that answer is that there are many items that can be put in your curbside bin that you do not put in your backyard compost pile. Such as, I'm going to list the items that you can put in curbside that you would not put in your backyard pile. And the list is all the soiled and lower grade papers, like tissues, paper napkins, paper towels, paper plates, paper cups, the cardboard egg cartons, sugar and flour bags. A lot of people, you get a pizza, as I'm sure most all of us do occasionally, and the round cardboard tray that the pizza sits directly on it gets greasy, and that makes it ineligible for typical paper recycling. But that greasy pizza board tray can go in your curbside compost. If the main clamshell box that the pizza came in doesn't have any grease in it, that doesn't have to go in your curbside compost. That can just go in your regular paper recycling with your other cardboard and office paper. Bones, shellfish, regular fish, they don't have to have a shell, they can have scales, poultry,
Kitty litter.
Kitty litter. That's it. That one was coming up. Kitty litter is amazing. From studies we've done, probably about 30% of the people in town have cats, and most of them use kitty litter for their cats to do their business. And that kitty litter is very heavy, not only because of the cat waste that goes into the kitty litter, but the kitty litter, even before the cats use it, is heavy. And when that goes into the landfill, we're paying $105 a ton. And that kitty litter can go in your curbside compost. And a lot of people ask about, well, what about the pathogens in the kitty litter? And the difference between your backyard pile of compost and compost that's managed up at Old Ferry Road or another commercial composting facility is by their directly managing it, the temperatures in the compost pile get up to and sometimes exceed 160 degrees for a 3-day period. And that more than is adequate to kill bacteria and well, not the bacteria that's eating the food, that's breaking down the materials, but to kill the pathogens. Also, small boxes like that you buy clementine oranges can go in there, or the little sort of flimsy balsa cardboard or wood box that you might get strawberries in or berries. That can go in your compost. Tea bags, coffee grounds with the filters. And don't worry about the little tiny staples that hold that box together, or the little staple on the tea bag. That will either be filtered away, or it's such a tiny, tiny piece of metal. With all the moisture and the heat, it'll probably rust away into nothing in quite short order. This is a kitchen container. Now this one's a little different because you can see it has holes on the side. This one is designed to be used with a compostable bag. And I've taken the compostable bag out. This one in particular is made by Glad, who makes lots of plastic bags. But this is not a plastic bag. This is made by vegetable and food matter, and it will break down quite easily. I've even tried one in my own backyard compost pile, which I mentioned doesn't get particularly hot, but it's still, in a matter of days, in the compost pile, started to break down. And the thing that's really attractive about this container and this system is that when a lot of people are fearful of getting into composting because they think, ugh, I'm going to collect all these food scraps and the scrapings off my plate and the choppings from when I make a salad, and the half-eaten hot dog that my kid didn't finish, and I'm going to put these into a container and put them on my kitchen counter. This is going to be stinky and gross. And what makes it stinky and gross, and it doesn't have to be that way, is when you put food scraps into a closed container that no air can get to, and there's a lot of moisture in there, and there's no air movement, that food starts to rot, basically. If you've ever done this, and you look in a compost pail and start seeing fuzz and mold and whatnot, and you open that thing up and it's pretty stinky, it can happen. Obviously, you have several options. One is you can just go empty it. If it starts to bother you, empty it. Don't keep it on your kitchen counter. But the system here, this is done by BioBag USA, and it's called their Max Air, like maximum air container, is that instead of putting your food scraps in a closed container and keeping air away from them, you want air to get to them. Compostable bag is like Gore-Tex. Moisture, vapor barrier, will pass through it. And so while your food scraps on your kitchen counter, they're actually drying out. They're becoming drier, and that is discouraging the biological breakdown of the food and the production of odors. My family has used this container for about 4 or 5 months, and I don't know, maybe some people have more sensitive nose than I do, but I've never, ever smelled the compost. And we leave it until it's full, and then we take it out to our curbside container. One of the other attractions, whether you use the Max Air container that obviously must be used with a compostable bag, you can still use a compostable bag in a closed container, if that's your preference. So there's sort of 3 ways to do it. One is a closed container with or without a compostable bag, and the Max Air container, which must be used with a compostable bag. But when we do bin distribution, the max air container with a roll of 25 bags will be available to everybody. People don't have to take it. But it will get them a roll of compostable bags in their hands so they can try it. They can try it with the max air container, and they can try it for a few weeks with a closed container, and they can decide which system works best for their household for collecting kitchen scraps. One last thing I'm going to mention, and then I'm going to open up to questions. There will be a fee charged for the curbside containers and the kitchen container. And the fee is about 1/3 of the actual cost to the town. This 13-gallon container, there's going to be a charge of $7 for it. The 21-gallon container, there's going to be a charge of $10 for that. And for the max air container with a roll of compostable bags will be $3. And the cost of the compostable bags alone, if you bought a box of 25 compostable bags, it would cost, I think, around $4.50. And so you're getting the container and a roll of bags for less than the cost of bags if you bought them in the store. And the reason we're doing this, there's two reasons. One, we want to stretch our tax dollar. If the town just gave these containers away, we would not be able to purchase as many, and we wouldn't be able to get as many into people's hands. And the other reason is we wanted people to have some sort of buy-in. We were concerned that if we gave all the containers away, that there would be some people, maybe not many, but a number of people who just think, oh man, I'm going to do this, I'm going to get the free container, because free is good. And then they might not stick with the program with composting, or they might not even do it at all. They might just say, I just got a great trash container. And so we wanted them to have some sort of buy-in. And we feel that it's a pretty minimal expense. After the program starts, there'll be no charge whatsoever. It'll all be covered in the tax base, what the town pays, Triple T, the town's hall, for picking up trash and recycling. The question is there another type of countertop container? And there's all kinds. This is the only one that's going to be available at bin distribution. There were, during the pilot, we had about 6 different kitchen containers. This was one of them, and we had some closed ones. But this is the one we've chosen to go with for the pilot. I should mention that with the curbside containers and a kitchen container, to participate in the program, you are not required to take either of them. You can participate in the program and use your own kitchen container, whatever you would like, and you can supply your own curbside container. And the only requirement is that your curbside container be have rigid shape and size, and have some kind of tight-fitting lid. It doesn't have to be a lockable lid. One thing about this, I should mention this metal wire right here. This container locks very easily. It's very, very easy to open and close. And when it's in the locked position, you can hear it snap. You all heard that. It's wonderful. And the 21-gallon container also has, it's not the exact same type of latch, but it has a latch that is probably even more secure than this. But if you have a concern of animals you think, oh, here, I'm going to take all this food and meat and food scraps and put it in a container. It's just going to be a banquet for the skunks and raccoons and dogs and birds in my neighborhood. During the pilot, we didn't have one instance, not one, of animals getting into the curbside compost. In fact, it's much more likely when the food scraps are mixed in with trash, because people often put their trash with food scraps in it in just a plastic bag by the curb, not in a can, and that's when the animals get into it and rip it open and spread it all over the place. Right. And so this is actually going to reduce that occurrence. Now the question is, where can you get compostable bags locally? At this very moment, the Brattleboro Food Co-op carries bio bags, Brown & Roberts carries bio bag, and True Value Hardware in Putney Road carries the Glad bags. Just yesterday, actually, I visited with the managers of Price Chopper in Hannaford, and I also called their corporate headquarters, told them about the curbside program, and encouraged them to handle the Glad bag or another brand. And there's a little leaf growing out of a circle, and at the bottom, which I'm sure is very hard to see, it says BPI. Any bag that is used in the curbside program must be BPI certified. That's the Biodegradable Products Industry certification. No other bag will be accepted. And if the driver looks in and sees a bag that's not BPI certified, he's going to leave the compost at the curb. And I've spoken with the Putnams at Brown & Roberts, because they do have a bag that claims to be biodegradable, but it's not BPI rated, and frankly, it's not compostable. It's just not an adequate bag. It basically breaks down into small pieces of plastic, which we're trying to keep plastic out of the environment. Where this breaks down, and it's basically made of food, and there's no plastic in this at all. And so any bag used must be BPI certified. There are still stinky type foods. One might be a meat that started to go bad. Another example that we've certainly found in our home is if you take chicken skin or chicken fat off a chicken breast. It doesn't take but a matter of hours before that becomes quite odoriferous. And if you have, or maybe just killer onions. I mean, some onions, you slice them, it's like, you clear the house and call 911. You can put those in a compostable bag, especially smelly items in a compostable bag, or just wrap them in a piece of newspaper and put them in your refrigerator or your freezer. And then when it's collection day, just put them right into the container. You could also put them in a plastic bag, but remember, when it's your compost day at the curb, to not put the plastic bag in. Empty the food item into the bin loose. Meat gets packaged often on a styrofoam tray with that little quilted little piece of paper or whatever it is underneath, and then saran wrapped over it. None of that is compostable. The meat is compostable. Styrofoam, there are no options in Brattleboro for anything made of styrofoam. The only option for styrofoam in Brattleboro is the trash.
Or to reuse it.
Or to reuse it.
With your students.
Yeah.
Then the other thing was, but in order to put that at your curbside, you don't have to have a bag, or you do have to have a bag. I never use plastic or any kind of bags.
The question is whether you have to have a bag when you put your items food side. One of the advantages of the compostable bag is that it keeps both your kitchen container clean, and if all your food scraps go from your kitchen container in a compostable bag into your curbside container, it keeps your curbside container clean. And it really cuts down on the yuck and ick factor that can come with composting. But some people thrive on the yuck factor. I went around and I looked at, there are some people who use the compostable bags faithfully, and their kitchen container and their curbside container stays clean. There are some people who don't, and they put their loose food scraps into their kitchen container and then dump their loose food scraps into their curbside container. And I would assume that they rinse out their kitchen container before they start refilling it. I don't know that, but I assume it. And on the curbside container, some people, after the driver empties it, especially, it's easy in the summer months, if they have a garden hose, they can rinse that out. But I had looked at some of the containers used in the pilot, and I can assure you that some people, over the course of the pilot, never, ever rinsed out their container. And that's their choice. I mean, it had food scraps, plastered around the inside of it. The driver really doesn't care. These drivers who have been picking up trash and garbage and recycling in Brattleboro, believe me, have seen it all. And They're not going to reach in and scrape out what's stuck to the sides. They're just going to tip it upside down. Whatever falls out, and whatever sticks, sticks. And each person has to decide how much of the yuck factor they want to tolerate. And I'm only here to say that by use of compostable bags, and also you could line both your kitchen container or your curbside container. You could line it with a paper bag or newspapers. There are other ways to keep the yuck factor down without using compostable bags. Question is about, I think, larger animals, such as bears, which aren't common in Brattleboro, but they aren't unknown, especially out on the back roads. In fact, we had a bear visit our compost
Probably the
container.
same night.
Yeah, maybe. And I don't have any reports of a bear trying to open one of these curbside containers. Bears are pretty large, they're pretty strong, and I think they're pretty smart. And so I think I would guarantee this against skunks and raccoons and dogs. I wouldn't necessarily guarantee it against bears, but I think that is a very uncommon occurrence, and I wouldn't let that dissuade you of that possibility. In fact, I would wear that with a badge of composting bravery if a bear got into my composting. I would want to take a picture and put it right on the internet. Yes, is what size do these compostable bags come in? The Glad bag, which is at Fireside True Value, and I would assume if Hannaford and Price Chopper carry compostable bags, they will carry the Glad bag, because they already carry the Glad line of all the other plastic bags and sandwich bags and garbage bags. This only comes in, I think it's 2.6 gallons. The Bio bag, which is carried by the Co-op and Brown and Roberts, and I believe Dottie's also has a Bio bag. And I don't know that they carry all these sizes, so I'm not guaranteeing that you'll find it on the shelves, but I know they manufacture it. They make every size imaginable. They make 2 gallon, 3 gallon, 13 gallon for a kitchen trash can liner bag, 30, 33, 39, I think 64 and 96. They even make a compostable cling wrap, and I'm not sure just how you would use that, but they make it all. Oh, and one other thing I want to mention, BioBag, and I do hope that one of the stores carries this next item I'm going to mention, made by BioBag, is a doggy bag, a little dog poop collection bag where you stick your hand down and pick it up. And that is, it's a little heavier weight. It's still made the same way. It's black. It's black instead of this sort of translucent gray, green, blue, whatever color you would call that. I think they just figured that people didn't want to be able to see the dog poop in there. Bad enough that you got to feel it when you pick it up. But it's a little heavier weight, so it still breaks down, but it breaks down more slowly. So if you have a dog and you want to have your dog waste go in the compost, that is okay. But it's got to be in a BPI certified bag. The question is, how is this helping economically? It's very direct. Someone mentioned that in an email just the other day, and it costs $105 a ton to put trash in the landfill, and that's driven to the Moortown landfill's closing. It's driven to the Coventry landfill, which is roughly the same distance away. So that's driven 100 miles up Interstate 91, and then an empty truck comes back 100 miles. So it's a 200-mile round trip to take trash to the landfill. It costs $105 a ton. The compost costs $50 a ton. So it's less than half, or it's roughly half. So the direct savings is $50 per ton to the savings of the town of Brattleboro and the taxpayers. And the environmental savings is a carbon footprint of driving a huge, giant diesel truck 200 miles as compared to about 2 miles. I mean, we're talking about literally 100 times further to drive your food scraps if you put them in the trash as opposed to put them in the curbside bin. These questions, one in a row. One is about an apartment building with 6 units, and I am very, very sorry and regretful to say that if you live in an apartment building with 5 or greater number of units, that you are not able to participate. Participants must be currently having their trash and recycling picked up by the town, Triple T, on a weekly basis. In buildings with 5 or more units, with 5 or more units are picked up by the landlord unless you're in some unique situation. The question is whether it might be expanded to cover buildings and units with 5 and more units, and that would directly be a question to pose to the select board. That's a monetary decision. If we picked up more stops, whether it's for trash, recycling, or compost, it would cost more money for Triple T to make more stops and make more runs, and you have to put the pressure on the select board if you want them to go that direction. Question is, if a family is composting and only has a minimal amount of organics to put it out the curb, can they put it out just periodically, maybe even only once a month? And the question is absolutely yes. One thing I want to discourage, and it's one of the reasons we got the 13-gallon container. We didn't want to give people a giant container, and then when their day came up, say they got their trash picked up on Wednesday and their compost, and their container was only half full. We didn't want them to hang on to it for a second or a third or a fourth week, especially with food scraps. Because given long enough time, food kept in this container, just outside, it will start to break down and it'll become yuckier and messier and whatnot. I encourage everybody who's in the program to put their curbside compost out every week, even if your container is not full. One of the added benefits of this program is that recycling for everybody, not just curbside participants, every single person who's getting their recyclables picked up every other week currently, when this program starts shortly, will get it picked up every week.
Yes.
So everything will be picked up. Trash, recycling, and compost will all be picked up every week. And we're out of time, but I'll stay.
This presentation has garnered a lot of interest, and there are still questions on the table. So Moss will stay around a little bit longer in case anyone has questions, but we do need to kind of wrap up the formal part of the presentation. What we've traditionally done, is there any announcements of events occurring in the next week that anyone would like to speak to?
Well, there's Brattleboro Green Up Day, Vermont Green Up Day on May 4th.
May 4th is Green Up Day. Do you know where to show up?
Show up at the Elliott Street Cafe.
Elliott Street Cafe,
Subaru, Brattleboro Subaru,
Brattleboro Subaru,
and West Brattleboro Common in front of the firehouse.
and West Brattleboro Common at the firehouse.
8 o'clock to noon.
8 to noon on May the 4th, Saturday.